Hello everyone! We are making this video on how to use Pycharm. Because there are a few differences between Pycharm and the Python IDLE, we are switching to Pycharm because it is more efficient and easier to use. Alright, so we can select Pycharm, and then something like this will show up. If you're a new user, then over here it would be blank, but these are some of the projects we've been working on. So now, to start a new project, we can click the Create New Project here, and this new window will pop up the location, and we can change the final one to change the name. Let's say How to Use Pycharm, like this, and Project Interpreter. Let's just keep it as whatever one you pick. For now, we have Python 3.7. Let's click Create. And now we would have this this project. We have the file tree here. How to use Pycharm is the folder, and over here we can create new things like a file, a scratch file, a directory, Python package, Python file, HTML file, and edit configuration file, and resource bundle. So now let's just make a file, and let's call this main.py. So this, and then now we see the editor. We can write, let's say, print hello world. Now, in order to run this, we have a few different ways. We can click the terminal down here, and this will pop up. We can write Python and then the name of this. So main.py, and hello world is printed here. So this is one way using the terminal. The terminal simulates a DOS environment like the CMD. But this way is too complex and it's too slow. So another way is up here we have a run button, but it's grayed out. So in order to be able to select this, we need to add a configuration. So over here, we select templates, Python, because this is Python, and Python interpreter here. We can use the default or Python 3.7. This is one way. Another way is to use a hotkey called Control Shift and then F10. This way, it automatically creates a configuration and runs this. And now we can simply save the configuration and we'll be able to use it. If we look at the configuration, it's just the default project, Python 3.7. Yeah. And now we can click run and hello world will be printed. If we are unable to find the right interpreter, we could go to File, Settings, and then we select the project and then the project name. For now it's project how to use Pycharm, and we can select project interpreter. Over here we have the different interpreters. So right now we only have 3.7. You can use whatever version of Python you have, but you have to have Python or else this won't work. If you can't find it here, you could click the settings button, press add, and in here you can find your python.exe file. We already have it, so we're not going to do that. Alright, let's write down that hotkey name to automatically find the configuration. It's called Control plus Shift plus F10. So this is auto configuration. And then after we have the configuration, it runs the code. Let's press it again. Control, Shift, and then F10. It runs the hello world code. Alright, so this is one of the hotkeys. Another hotkey we have is duplicating a line. It's using Control plus D. So we need to highlight whatever we want to duplicate, and then we can use Control D to duplicate it. This one is quite useful if we want to write similar lines a lot of times, and this is duplicating a line. And now, if we run this, it would print hello world 4 times. After duplicating line, we have the find. So find is Control F, find keywords. So if we do Control F, let's find hello world, or we could just do world, any word. And then this is Control F. After Control F, we can replace the word that we found using Control plus R. Replace keywords. So now if we write Control R, another one pops up. Over here, let's say we turn world into universe. Universe. And then now if we replace all of the worlds would be turned into universe. So if we run this, it would be hello universe. Alright, so that's the find and replace. Okay, after these two, we have surround with, which is quite complicated. Control, Alt, and T. So let's do v01 equals, let's say 23, the number, and then we highlight this. Control Alt T, we would find surround with. We could surround it with an if statement. If true, then v01 equals 23. Or we can do while true, v01 equals 23. And we can also do things like try finally, try this. Alright, so these are some of the different surround with. Okay, next we have the seeing recent changes. We have Alt plus Shift plus C. See recent changes. So this is Alt Shift C. You can see the recent changes. Like we can look at this one. It would be a blank one, and then we added all of this. So that's seeing all of the changes. And last one, we have Control and Slash. This is originally used to comment. Like if we wanted to say this is a comment, we could highlight this and press Control Slash. It would be turned into a comment. These are all comments, but as time went on, another way of using this would be turning code into comments. This way the code wouldn't be run, and we could get rid of it without actually getting rid of it. Now there would be no code, but there are a lot of comments. Alright, so that's the comment, Control, and Slash. So these are some of the more important hotkeys. Of course, there are many more. We could go to File, Settings, and Key Map to see all of the different hotkeys. We could see like add or remove caret, add rectangular selection or mouse drag, and so on and so on. There are a lot, and there are like main menu, or like external tools, tool windows, all of that. We could also change the hotkeys to something we like. Let's say we can change the tab. We right click it and add keyboard shortcut. Let's turn tab into, let's say, Control W. This would turn the hotkey. We could press OK, and we remove the last one. It would be like this. If you don't want it anymore and want to turn it back to the original, we could press reset here, and it would be reset. Alright, so that is changing the key map. Next, we talked about the we already talked about the terminal, Python, and the run. Next, let's talk about the to-do. So to-do is really important in my opinion. It's setting goals. We could use the comment and write to-dos, all capital, and this would make it a to-do. Let's do to-do 1, and let's make another one, to-do 2. This way, if you have a goal somewhere, you could write it down, and later on, if you want to know where you want them, you could find this really visualized and you could select them to find where they are. This is really useful in really big projects where you have multiple different files. Alright, that's to do. After this, there's the refactor variables. For this, let's give a variable, let's say var01 is hello. And then we could print variable 01. Let's use Control D to duplicate this. And then bring them into new lines. Now, when we run this, the first four hello universe would be from the top here, and then the hello would be here. If we wanted to change variable 1 into something else, but you wanted to make these all the same as this variable, we could simply right click this after it's selected. We could go to refactor and go to rename. Then we could rename this, let's say variable 02, and now we refactor. All the other variable 01s also changes to variable 02. So this is really useful if the variable is used all over the place and you don't want to change each one manually. You could simply right click, refactor and rename. So that's the renaming. After this, let's talk about the debugging. This is one of the best features in my opinion on Pycharm. So for this, we need to make a new set of code. Let's just get rid of all of this, turn them all into a comment with Control/, and then down here, let's make a simple interaction. Import random. This is a library that's already built in, so you don't need to download it. And let's make two numbers using this. Number 1 would be random integer from 1 to 10. So this is getting a random integer from 1 to 10. It has to be an integer. And number 2, do the same thing from 1 to 10. And then let's print both of these to make sure this is working. Okay, so we have 10 and 2. These are two random digits. So now let's multiply them together. Result is number 1 times number 2. And then we can ask a simple question to the user. But let's do this in a while true loop, so if they do it wrong, they can try again. We can do answer equals input of a string, and this string is what is number 1 times number 2. Let's make sure this is working. Yeah, so this is what is the, this is question mark. Let's run that again. So now it's what is 9 times 6. All right. Now let's do the if statement. So if they answer it wrong, it would say incorrect. If they answer it right, it would be correct. So if answer, but this answer is in a string right now because all input is a string. We need to turn this into a number. So integer eval equals result, which is them multiplying together. Then we could do print correct. And then we could come out of this while true loop because they already answered it correctly. And if this is false, then we would print incorrect. Try again. So let's run this to make sure it's working. What is 10 times 9? Obviously it's 90, but let's write 70 just to test it out. And now it's saying incorrect. Try again. What is 10 times 90? So now we write the correct one, 90, and it would say correct, and we finish with exit code 01. Oh, sorry, code 0. So now we have this code working correctly. Let's start with the debug. So when we press debug, nothing really happens. Same thing happens. We can write 24 and it would be correct. That is because we haven't set any breakpoints yet. Breakpoints are important because they're kind of like checkpoints where the code runs to that certain point and stops. Let's put a checkpoint at the answer. It goes here but doesn't actually run this line. It just stops here. So we press the debug, which is this bug, and now once it comes here, it goes into this debug. It shows all of the variables that we've already had, number 1, number 2, and the result, which is 9, 10, and 90. It also prints it out here, which is really cool. Number 1 is 9, number 2 is 10, and the result is 90. And then now we have this. We could add some variables. We could do number 1 plus number 2 like this. It would be 19 because 9 plus 10 is 19. And if we wanted to delete this one, we could select it and press the minus sign here. It would go away. All right, so now that we talked about variables, let's talk about the top here. So over here we have step over, step into my code, step out, and the run to cursor. All right, for these, let's rerun the code. So for this, if we press step over, then we need to go into the console and select finish the question. Let's say 23, and then now it would be on the next line. So if we press step over, it steps to the very end. If we selected, let's say while true instead, and rerun the code, we press step over, it would go to the next step. So that is what step over does. And then let's try out step into. So step into by itself, it goes to this other code that is not ours. This is a library called parse.py. Since this input uses parse.py, it would come into here to try and find the next step. So if we don't want to do this, since normally we just assume this is correct, we could write step into my code. So this only does the stuff in my own code, and we step into the next line like that. We need to finish this 40, and it goes to the next line. So that is step into my code. Next, let's talk about step out. So step out is basically step out of the debug and let the code finish on its own. So we do this. Again, we press step out, and then this runs normally, like 6 times 8, 48. It would be correct, and it finishes without doing the debug. And lastly, we have this button, which is run to cursor. So first we need to select a point with our cursor. Let's do this point, and we press run to cursor. It would run here. And then we could go to next step, step into my code, and then we would need to answer 5 times 8, let's say 35, and it would be incorrect. Let's run to the cursor, which is over here. It says incorrect, so we could go to the next one, 5 times 8 again. So let's put in the right code, 40. So now it says correct, and it hasn't braked yet because this is where the debug is at. Just because it's on the line doesn't mean it's run. So now we're at break. If we want to finish, we could press step into my code, and it finishes. Alright, so these are this. Next we have the evaluate expression. So this is basically like a calculator, but for code. We could, since we know the values of these, we could do like number 1 plus number 2. Let's do result minus these two, and we could evaluate. The result is 28. We could also like use other things like string number 1, like this. 2 turns into a string, which is 2. So evaluating is really useful because if we want to show this normally in the code, we would have to print this, and each time we type out print, it takes up a lot of time and effort. So this way it's easier and faster. Alright, so this is the evaluate. Now over here, this means rerun. So we just rerun the whole code, which is the same as this rerun. Okay, next we have this, which is resume program, also known as going to the next breakpoint. Let's say we put a breakpoint over here, and then we run this again. Over here, we are already at number 1. We could go to the next breakpoint, which is here, and we would calculate number 1, number 2, and result. And then over here, this is the stop, which is here as well. This is just to exit the code by itself. And then after this, we have 2 other ones. This one is to allow us to see all of the breakpoints we have selected. So it's over here, number 1, and while true. We could also browse through them over here. Okay, next we have this one, which is to mute the breakpoints. If this is muted, then they turn gray, and every single time we rerun the code, we press 24, it just finishes. So we are basically running the debug as normal running, since all of the breakpoints are muted. Alright, now let's look at this. We talked about the top here, we talked about variables, we talked about this side. The only thing is missing is the frame. Now the frame, if we rerun this, we would see we have the main module right now. So this is just the main code. If we want another frame, we just need to define something. Now since that's kind of complicated, so I won't include that in this lesson, just know that every single time you define a new function, it shows up here. Alright, that concludes this video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the future. And remember, crack the coding enigma with work for tuition as your sigma.